Bienvenidos a todos to another exciting episode of Creator Dive-In, brought to you by PRGDA, Puerto Rico Game Development Association. We have an amazing presentation, an amazing dive-in today. But first, let's talk a little bit about what these Creator Dive-Ins are. These Creator Dive-Ins are pretty much a very focused space for our creators in our community to be able to share knowledge, to share what they've learned or what they have done, a post-mortem of sorts. It provides a learning experience for you, our beautiful viewers, and creators receive feedback on suggestions on how to make this presentation even better. At the end of all the process, you get a shareable video that is going to be very helpful for your portfolio. So what makes for a good topic? Pretty much anything can make for a good topic. We're looking for something that is based around a product, so something that you have released, something in the shortest range, maybe 20 to 30 minutes. Just make sure that whatever you are talking about is not internal company information. We do not want unreleased projects. So if you have something that is in the works, we want something a little bit more finished, so that way you have something cool to present and talk about. You can also not want to be not talking about internal information about released projects without company approval. So even if the project has been released, if the ownership of the project belongs to a third party or conglomerate or something, you're going to want to have the permission to talk about those topics. Make sure to respect your NDAs. And these can be anything from design, art, engineering, production, and who could even do these type of things. Well, anybody can do these. Developers, whether you're students, you're indie, or you're corporate, content creators, if you're a streamer, an influencer, or an artist, and more, journalists, producers, musicians, anybody who ever touches video game in somewhere along their pipeline and you want to share your information or knowledge, you are more than welcome to join. What are the benefits of participating? Well, we are going to be able to amplify your work, and as part of our community, it'll be a learning experience for other people. You receive feedback on your work, and you'll have a cool video to stream, to have streamed and share in your portfolio. So you want to participate? Well, that's great news. So you can register at this link. It'll be coming up in just a second in the comments. Format is up to the creator. It can be in English or Spanish or Spanglish if you si quiere hacer eso. It can be streamed live, or if you want to make it more structured and more edited, you can have a pre-recorded video that we do. It could be a slide presentation or a live showcase, kind of like a tutorial, step by step, showing you in Engine how to do things. Once you've signed up, we'll reach out to you, schedule a prep session and presentation. You're not just going to sign up and tell you, hey, this is what your day and this is what you're going to be presenting. Good luck, have fun. We're going to be helping you make an awesome presentation. And if you have any questions, please feel free to go to our Discord and check it out at the Creator Dive-In channel. Ask any questions there that you might want. With all that being said, we have an amazing presentation for you today by the great Lorenzo Irizarry about game design best practices. Hey, Lorenzo, how are you doing?
Pretty good, man. How are you? Wow, that's hard.
Yeah, I love the RGB microphone. A true gamer. Is that a Cyberpunk Steel Series? Oh, not Steel Series.
No. This is a HyperX. The only HyperX mic.
Okay, gotcha. Real gamer hours. Yeah, right. This is a real gamer move.
So okay to just start and intro and everything.
To start. All right. Game design practices with Lorenzo. Hit it.
Right. Thank you, Francisco. Thank you, Esteban, and everybody at PRGDA. Before I start anything, thank you so much for this opportunity. You have no idea what this means to me. Not just this subject in particular, but being able to talk about these things is something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I appreciate you guys giving me another platform to do it, and it is an honor to do so. So
our pleasure. Our pleasure.
Before I begin, just a quick intro, like Francisco and Esteban introduced me earlier. My name is Lorenzo. I go by the Sarukage on Twitch and other online platforms. Quick background: I am an IT consultant and game designer right now. Those are my main things. I wear many hats. I've done many things in the past, but I won't bore you with it right now. Um, I am very passionate about mentoring and just design in general and IT in general. So anytime I get a chance to share my insights, my knowledge, my experiences and stuff, I kind of jump on it. Um, I my Twitch channel, like they said before, I usually use it like a soapbox, like basically like a platform. That's not my main thing. I have it so people can come to me and ask questions. So if you ever see me online, you have a question, you want to talk about something, I'm your guy. All right. That being said, today's theme is uh, game design best practices. Right. One quick disclaimer about this that I want to give right before I start. Everything I'm going to talk about today is based on experiences and things I've learned from professionals in the industry in general throughout my years. Not just in game design, but in IT in general, because it applies to many different disciplines. But today, obviously, we're focusing it on game design. When you're listening to this and we're going through the discussions, keep this in mind. These are just that guidelines. They're best practices guidelines. I am going to do my best to present them to you in a way that it gives you insight, it gives you inspiration, but at the same time, in a way that you can apply it to your particular situation. This is not a black and white kind of discussion. These are just general truths I've learned that you can adapt to your particular idea, your particular vision, your particular situation. Don't think that there's only one way to go about it. And if you have questions along those lines, please do prompt them here after the stream, whenever. I would be more than glad to discuss it further with you, and you can share your take on it, and we can look at it from different angles. That's the whole point of this. But uh, the main thing to understand about, besides that one point, is also that a lot of the stuff that I have in here are things that I've learned from observing both successes and mistakes of people that have been in the industry for decades. So do take this with a huge barrel of salt. Realize that there is no wrong way to go about these things, and that you can always tweak this and tailor it to your particular situation. As long as you get something out of it, as long as it makes your craft better, your job better, mission accomplished. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start the little presentation here, and we can get right on it. So, as the title says, game design best practices, right? Fairly simple to understand. So the first thing that we're going to cover is that it all starts with an idea, right? You have an idea for a game or a particular software or mechanic or whatever it is. You should always start with picking a theme. The hardest thing to do whenever you start creating something is finding a starting point. I remember back when I was learning how to write essays, the worst part about writing as an essay was starting. The introductions, like where do I start the first sentence? How do I address the thing? I know what I want to talk about. I just don't know where to start. Well, with game design, the best place to start, in my experience, is to pick a theme, whatever it is. What is your game about? What is your mechanic about? What is the art style? Whatever aspect of the game that you can find, pick a theme, kind of break it down to its core idea, and go from there. Right? Like I said, something simple. All right. Don't get bogged down in too many details yet. That's later. You can flesh out things later. Right now, at the very beginning, you just want something simple, something core that kind of hits to what you're aiming for, right? Once you pick a theme, pick an audience. And I don't mean go look at people, look for people, start chatting them up. And no. I mean, pick a general audience you want to tailor this particular theme and game to. Are you making a game for kids? Are you making them for all ages? Are you making them for adults? Are you making it for a particular niche group like hardcore players? Are you making it for multiplayer gamers, et cetera, et cetera? You know, just start narrowing down your audience, like based on genre, based on game type, gameplay, mechanic, whatever, and just start writing these ideas down. As far as your audience is concerned, again, avoid being way too general or narrow. Just try to find a little gray area balance kind of thing. Maybe pick a genre, pick a general age range or a generation, or say a style of player, like 2 or 3 things. Don't, if you get up a list of like 10 different like aspects of the audience that you're aiming for, you're being way too narrow, and it's going to be very hard to flesh everything out around it, because at this day and age, once you release your game, it's going to be exposed to literally millions of people. And like the nice little decoration that I have on my coffee table, um the best advice I can give here to keep in mind is that you're never going to make everybody happy. You're not a taco. Since you're not a taco, keep it manageable. 2, 3, maybe 4 little things to kind of describe the kind of audience you're aiming for, right?
And even then, there are some people who do hate tacos. I don't know. I've been told that they exist. I don't know, but I've been told.
They do. But you get the point, right? Switch taco with your favorite staple food. Maybe it's not a taco. Maybe it's a tostón. Maybe it's arroz con pollo. I don't know. But you get the idea, right? So once you get your audience, make sure that your audience is aligned with your theme. So it's great that you pick an audience, but if you pick an audience that doesn't quite fit in with or doesn't tend to gravitate towards your theme, you're already going to run into trouble, right? If you pick a theme that's mostly for little kids, and then you pick an audience that's hardcore players, you're gonna, needless to say, you're gonna run into trouble, right? So keep in mind that everything should mesh well, and as like everything else, and you're gonna see this being repeated over and over again. Your audience is just a guideline. And you'll see me address this later on as well. Once the game is released, that's when you're really going to know who your audience is. That's how you're really going to know how your game works out in the wild, how what kind of real bugs are in there, what aspects of and mechanics of the game work or not, what people actually like versus don't like. You may have an idea, oh man, this works cool, this is the greatest game I've made, and you put it out, and all the stuff that you thought was great, everybody hates. So use it as a guideline of where you want to go, the kind of people you're aiming for. And again, barrel of salt, take it as you go, and see how it evolves. Now that you have an audience, now comes one of the most important parts of your idea: setting up a reasonable scope. This is very important, because please do not repeat this. For all of you, we're going back to Cyberpunk, but on a more tragic tone here. Any of you that were following the release of Cyberpunk when it first came out, it was a disaster. And to keep a very long story very, very short, even the CEO and like studio lead, when he publicly apologized to everybody, he basically identified what the core problem and the core issue that they ran into that led to all the problems, and that was the scope. The scope of the game was way too big. They went too far. They had a great vision, an awesome idea, really, but for the timeline that they had, it was just not realistic, so they released and nothing was finished. Please don't repeat this. When you first work on your game, decide on a scope that is manageable and realistic for what you want to do, and if you want to grow it further, write those things down for future reference, for future review. You can always expand on it later. So don't feel like you have to do your entire vision in one go. Manage your scope according to your budget, according to your time, according to your workforce, whatever that may be. Maybe it's just you. Maybe it's you and a couple of friends. Maybe it's a team of 20. Manage your scope before you start, or else, again, you're going to start feeling the pain before you even get halfway there. All right. Next up, we have at this stage when you're fleshing out the idea, and I would say throughout any day, at any stage of any project, carry a notepad or something with you and just write everything down. Carrying a notepad is the most basic, simple way of doing it. It's analog, doesn't require batteries. You can pull it out anywhere, write things down, and don't wait. Just write it down. Make sure whatever notes you write down are meaningful. If you say, "Oh, remember, flesh out the loot system." This is something I wrote for myself for a game idea that I have like months ago. About 2 weeks later, I had no freaking idea what that loot system I had thought of was because I didn't write down the details, or at least anything meaningful to remind me of the particular thing I had thought of. And now I'm struggling to remember what it is. So make sure it's meaningful. Also, you have a smartphone. If you cannot bother yourself to have a pen and paper, you have a smartphone with notes. Write them down. Make sure that you sync them to a cloud service of some sort, so that if something happens to your phone, you don't lose those notes. But you don't really have an excuse. None of us have an excuse. You have an idea, write it down immediately. Don't waste your time. Another big one that a lot of people don't think about, and some people don't even know about, use mind maps. Mind maps are probably one of the oldest and best ways to flesh out ideas of any kind, even projects. You start with a core idea and you start branching out to different things, and then you flesh those out. This presentation you're looking at right now is actually a mind map I created for today's lecture. And all I did is I started, you see it right there, write everything down. That's one branch. And within that, those little points, just notes like this, it organizes you. It gives you a visual of the things that you're writing about and thinking about. Makes it a heck of a lot easier to organize yourself and keep a lot of information in one place. If you want a recommendation, Xmind, and we can talk about that later as well.
Yeah, there is a question about what a mind map is, but it sounds like I think you answered it pretty well, and we could maybe if we have time, we can see a peek behind the curtain, because that in of itself was so cool.
Oh, thank you. No, but seriously, use mind maps. Moving on from that, next big thing. Do not worry about limitations or rules at this stage. You're forming an idea. So trying to limit yourself on in terms of how your mechanic should work, and like how many stages or how many characters. No. This is about fleshing out an idea, and restraints make fleshing out that idea that much more difficult. So try not to tie yourself down with anything that might limit your creativity. Again, these are just ideas. We're nowhere near production yet. Ask yourself lots of questions. The dumber, the better. Get those out of the way. A lot of people say there's no such thing as dumb questions. Oh, yes, they are. There's lots of dumb questions. All it is that they have dumb answers, but that doesn't mean they're not important or valid. Ask them. Ask every question you can think of, and do your best to find an answer, or find someone that can help you find an answer. Now, main question that you should be asking yourself over and over again. Does this idea sound like it could be fun? After all, you're making a game. I don't care what anybody tells you. Gamer, developer, production company guy, CEO. I don't care who they are. If they tell you, oh, but if whatever your idea mechanic is, it has to blah 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 because of blah blah, and then because the statistics say, ignore it. A game isn't a game if it's not fun. And all of us as players have seen this repeated over and over again, and unfortunately a lot more frequently recently, where even big AAA games end up flopping because players are not having fun. And it's all because of some, I don't know, old tradition or way of doing things that people get stuck in, thinking, oh, well, the last games we've made were so successful because we did it like this. So if your players are not having fun, you're going to have to be willing to sacrifice that, right? Moving to the next one. Try to have at least one game reference. Find a game you like that has a similar idea or mechanic that you have, a similar theme, a similar audience to yours, and use that as a template. You don't copy it, but use it as a reference. If you can find a combination of these things from multiple different games, even better, because then you get to see similar things from different perspectives, and it'll stimulate you and help you flesh out your idea into something far more robust. It would suck if your game ends up being a clone of something that's already out there, right? Let's see. Oh, so went too fast there. Sorry. Um, do not worry about whether the example you're using was successful or not. I cannot overemphasize this. Whether the somebody else's game was successful or not has no bearing on yours. It's a lot of it has to be do with timing, execution, presentation, and other things that have nothing to do with the idea itself. There's tons of games out there that were great ideas and they flopped. And maybe 10 years later, people rediscover it and they go like, well, why did we think this was crap? This is great. Happens all the time. So don't let that stop you. Also, compare your idea to previous games and try to come up with a better implementation. That's another thing you can try. It's like, I love this game, and when in this mechanic, this idea that they had was cool, but if they had only done it this way, it might be better. Well, there's an idea for you to flesh out. You know, if you have a better way of doing something that's been done before, try it. You could turn it into something new. Don't be afraid to take tried and true things out there and bring them into a new game, a new genre, or whatever. Look at Metroidvania. Metroidvania works for a reason. And how many different games do we see nowadays that use the Metroidvania model and at the same time end up being something very, very original? First one that comes to mind is Dead Cells. So if you want a good example of someone who took old ideas and old mechanics and gave it a new twist and created something amazing out of it, there's an example for you, right? I'm going to try to speed this up a little because it's a lot of material to go through, and I don't want to leave you guys hanging. Another thing you can do: study a white paper or post-mortem or two. Learn from other people's mistakes. To refer to Cyberpunk earlier, that is an excellent one to go to because you can see what happens when you bite off more than you can chew, among other things. There's a lot of really good lessons learned there, and even games that were successful, they have postmortems and they do have things that went wrong, and they talk about them there. Study those; those help immensely. Find someone who can give you feedback, and this is very important. Feedback is just feedback. I just want people to kind of give you their take on what you're doing. Very important. Make sure that they are trustworthy and ask for feedback and not criticism, especially at this stage. It's just an idea. You don't need criticism. It's not going to help you. You just need a sounding board so that you're not just mulling it over in your own head and getting a narrow view of it. You want other perspectives to come in to help you flesh out that idea further. Always revisit these ideas. Even if you really like where you're at with a particular idea, revisit it. Revisit it often. Look at it again from a different angle. Wait a few weeks. Look at it again. You never know when something new is going to pop up, or you're going to notice something that you didn't notice the first time. Don't be afraid to make changes when necessary, especially at this stage. This is not going to cost you anything. Make changes. Make lots of changes. Have 2-3 versions of any one idea. And nothing is sacred. So don't treat anything as some holy cow that you're not allowed to touch. This is the place to touch everything. And very, very important, we're not in production yet, but if at all possible, start writing your design doc at this stage. Especially once you start fleshing out those ideas. Yeah, now. Once you start fleshing out those ideas, you should start at least creating the structure for your game design doc, the different sections of it. If you have a core mechanic in mind, open up that Word document or whatever you're using to type and core mechanic and start putting in details and start revising as you go. It will help you immensely later on. Start thinking about your business model for your game if you're going to make money. I mean, if the game is meant to be free, do not worry about that at this stage. If you are intending on making money off of the game, which is most of us is where we're at, think about whether you're going to sell the game or are you going to make it freemium, where it's free to play, and then there's stuff in it that people buy. Will it have DLC or in-app purchases? Keep it as simple and general as these things for now, because you do not want the business model to bleed into your game design. But you do want to have something in mind of where you want to fit. Make sure it fits your idea and theme. And this is very, very important. All of us here have run into the frustrating problem where some studio or publisher thinks they have a great business idea where they can make money and make the players happy. And then we see their money making idea, and it basically crashes into the game and takes away the joy of the game, or interferes with the player experience and what have you, or just doesn't fit the game at all. And we're standing there going like, you want us to pay for what now? You don't want people reacting like that. So whatever this means to you, make sure that your business model idea fits the idea and the theme of the game you're making. If it feels off, if it feels awkward, if it just, if it's a distraction or anything along those lines, stop. Just stop, mull it over again, rethink it, because just because it works well for somebody else and they made a lot of money doesn't mean A, that they made a good game, B, that it's going to work for you. Right? And the key part of this, do not forget your audience. Your business model that shouldn't just fit the idea of your game and the theme, it should fit your audience too. If you know your audience, you know what they respond to, you know what they are looking for. Let's take the Fortnite community, for example. The Fortnite community are very happy with their game because they enjoy spending money on things like cosmetics and emotes and things like that, and being able to play their game for free. That crowd, that is what makes them happy. That is what they get value out of. And with any business model, the key thing to keep in mind is that what defines a good business model, or a good business in general, is one where the business owner, or whoever is the seller, the merchant, and the client, in this case the players, get equal value out of the transaction. If only one or the other gets value, it's not a good business. So try to keep that balance in mind when you're doing this, or when you're thinking about these ideas. All right. Now we're going to go into bringing those ideas into life. And this is where you start your prototyping phase. Remember how I said start writing your design doc as soon as possible? This is where it comes in. Start prototyping as soon as you can, whatever it is. Take your central mechanic as the first thing you work on, if possible, before anything else. Create a tiny, tiny little prototype of that mechanic. Start fleshing it out. Solid mechanics almost always lead to the natural development of a solid core game loop. And that is the reason why you want to work on that first before anything else. Forget about anything pretty. Get some low poly stuff, some like squares and cubes and circles and like spheres or whatever. Cheap platforms. Make it as ugly as possible. Just focus on the mechanic itself. And iterate until you have something that you feel is solid. And make sure you can come up with something that you can play test as soon as possible. Whatever it is. This does not have to be a full playable game, obviously. You can play with just a mechanic. I've seen a lot of really good examples. There was one guy that's developing a superhero game, and he's putting up the videos of the mechanics as he's developing on Twitter, and they look amazing. But all it is a bunch of like makeshift stages with just nothing but spheres and blocks and stuff, and some pre-rendered characters that he's using for the models, and just the only really pretty thing in there is the main character model that he has right now, and that's it. And everything else is just pure mechanics, and he's just testing it over and over, and it's playable. He's able to do all these things. Try to get to just that stage, right? Just the core stuff of it. Move it on to the next part. Use all the tools available to you. You don't need an SDK. You don't need Unity. You don't need Godot. You don't need any of this stuff. And a lot of people might be thinking, are you out of your mind? How am I going to do anything without an SDK? It's like, you're asking me to make a prototype. Analog tools are best at this stage. Maybe it's playing cards. Maybe it's dice. Maybe it's pen and paper. Like tabletop RPGs are gold here. Any of you here who've ever played Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or any kind of games like that, oh my God, those are the first games ever created in human history. And they work today for a reason. They don't require a computer or anything like that, but they have all the same elements. How many video games out there do you see that take their mechanics and a lot of their gameplay from mechanics created for tabletop RPGs? Dice are just RNG in the real world. You can do the same thing with cards. You can set up rules for gameplay of different things. You can add symbolism to different card types and different suits of cards and things like that. You can use pen and paper to write up a logic flow for a storyline or a conversation. The possibilities are endless. Sports equipment, an actual sport. Take a sports game you like that kind of fits with the idea of your game design and start playing with it in real world and start testing out, well, what if we make a rule about trying to do this and try to do it in the real world, see how it works. Especially if you're going to do a game with physics in it, that is very much necessary, because then once you got the feel for it in the real world, it's easier to translate into the game world. Radio control toys. Now we have stuff like drones, for crying out loud. There's so much stuff we have nowadays that's radio controlled. There's possibilities are endless too. You can literally recreate a stage of a game in the real world using just your table, books, and a little remote control drone. Maybe use a little Lego character or whatever. You can recreate a video game in the real world to kind of have a model of what you're trying to do. Collectibles and figures, puzzles. Oh, for crying out loud! Building blocks, tabletop RPGs, which I already mentioned. You get the idea. But this one, like I said, is one of the best tools, if not the best tools you can have. Tons of systems, mechanics, flow and story ideas, rules, customizations, etc., 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 etc. I could dedicate a whole week just to talk about using tabletop RPGs for video game design. Oh, sorry. I saw some comments there. I thought they were directing a question at me.
No. Some people did suggest using Figma, Spline 3D, Bezel
Yes.
to prototype.
Oh, heck yes. Those are all great ideas. The main point is, don't rely on just your digital tools. You have tools all around you. Even your own imagination, just standing around talking to yourself, dressing up and whatever. You might look like a fool, but it'll help you. It'll really help you flesh things out. You don't need to code at all. And I'm not just saying this to echo the Unity mantra. You don't need to code at all. A game idea and a game mechanic starts before code. So use mind maps. I'm going to keep repeating this. Use mind maps. Yes, I'm repeating it here. And I'm going to keep repeating it. Use mind maps. Next up, prototype often, make lots of changes. Remember, nothing's sacred, right? Try to have more than one version going at any given time of your game. If you can make multiple versions of a mechanic or a stage or what have you, do so. Don't discard ideas that don't work out or that don't fit. It can be a lifesaver, really. What doesn't make sense or doesn't quite fit right now may prove to be the answer to a problem that you don't yet have or you don't yet see. So keep it in the back burner. It didn't work at that moment, just put it aside, put it on a different branch. Just keep it there. And even past going gold, because you never know when you do your white paper, your postmortem, which you should do for yourself as well. It's always good to have those references there to remind you of mistakes, of ideas, or things that had to be dropped for whatever reason. This is very important. Work on one, and like it says there, I mean it, one thing at a time. Do not try to work in parallel here. Very bad idea. It may make you take longer, but if you don't work on one thing at a time, you're gonna step over yourself, and that's when mistakes get made. And oftentimes you make mistakes before you realize you made one, and it's gonna come back and bite you later on. So try to keep it to one thing at a time. And in order to facilitate this, it helps to have a priority list in place of what's more important at any given time. And please shuffle those around as you go. Like I said, do not work on things in parallel when you can avoid it. Sometimes you have to, but as long as you can avoid it, try not to work in parallel. Don't start production until your design doc is set in stone. This is something I learned from project management. I cannot iterate this enough. Feature creep is a thing, and it's a horrible thing. The last thing you want to do is start adding or changing things in the middle of production. It is a nightmare. And if you want a really good example, which I'll mention again later, of what can happen when that happens. Anthem. Anybody here who knows about the game Anthem and how quickly it died, one of the main reasons was because they made multiple changes, not just to the project itself, but to the staff of the project at the midpoint of production and just killed it. You do not want to deal with feature creep. Even if you're working by yourself, having a complete doc will help you stay focused and grounded. Do not revise your doc unless you hit a true wall in production or there's some other kind of obstacle. Like, seriously, if it doesn't prevent progress, do not touch it. That is always a last resort decision when you hit a wall that you just can't get around. The consequences are they're horrible. Cyberpunk ran into this as well because of their scope issue. There are still features they had to take out that people wanted and expected that are just not there. All right. Start testing and QA as soon as you have something playable. I don't care if it's just a prototype. Do it. Doesn't matter if there's nothing but placeholders. Do it. Start early. You can do a full team later on. My favorite mantra, document everything. I do mean absolutely everything. Every function, every mechanic, every flow, every game loop, asset, and not just words. Use mind maps, use visual documentation whenever possible. Find a workflow that works for you, but always document it, always update it. Make sure it's sensible, concise, but meaningful documentation. If you need to bring in more people to work with you, you're going to need it to get people up to speed. And programmers, I'm looking at you. I learned to program. I've dealt with programming. I know the trappings. I know the temptations. But seriously, it's the most important place to have documentation. Avoid acronyms and abbreviations when possible. They just get in the way. Trust me. Write documentation other people can understand and follow, unless it's something you want to keep a secret. You know? In that case, I understand. And some of you out there, I've talked to you about this and you're probably laughing about it right now. But seriously, if you're working in a team, write documentation that other people can understand. Please. Documentation is pointless if you're the only one that can follow and understand it. This is basic logic, right? Are you trying to keep this a secret? Like I said a minute ago, are you trying to keep it a secret? If the answer to that is yes, then, by all means, don't forget documentation. But it'll do you good.
Lorenzo,
Yes.
unfortunately,
We are out of time.
we're getting a bit. I love the speed of this. I don't want to cut you off like this. We will be back to this. This is so amazing and so good. If we can have you back, we will have a part 2. If you have any questions, there it is, the peek behind the curtain.
This is the mind map.
This is the mind map. We promised you.
Yeah, this is it. This is what it looks like. We got this far. There's 2 more sections right here. These 2 right here. Oh, no, 3. Sorry. These actually go a lot faster. But yeah, you get the idea.
We will definitely be coming back for that part 2. Thank you so much, Lorenzo, for that talk. I can't wait for part 2. Where can they find you, Lorenzo?
You can find me at my Twitch channel. That's _Sarukage on Twitch. I have my Linktree links there. If you go to my Twitch channel, if you go to the About page, there is a panel with all my socials and stuff. It's my Linktree. You'll have my LinkedIn there. You have my Discord there. You'll have my Twitch. Everything. You'll even have a contact form in case you need to reach out to me for something specific or professional, whatever. That's the best place to reach out to me, to be honest.
Thank you so much. The link for if you want to create a creator's dive-in after Lorenzo's part 2 is right there. And if you want to participate, make sure to go to there. Thank you so much, Lorenzo.
The honor's all mine, man. Seriously.
Oh my God, it's been great. And I hope to see you all over there. Thank you.
Have a good one, guys.